Yeah. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, all good. Welcome to our event, unlocking the mangroves potential for climate, for innovations for climate goals. Today, today is a special day. It's Oceans Day, so happy Oceans Days. This is the theme of the day. We are also celebrating biodiversity and nature today. So what a better fit for these sessions to really talk about mangroves. And of course, for the audience, and most of you are aware about mangroves, but good to remind you some of these characteristics of these ecosystems that are really valuable for the world, for the climate, and for nature as well. They are our climate allies. Mangroves store up to 4 times more than a forest. And to give you a bit of context, 1 square meter of mangroves can store emissions to up to 90,000 cars annually. So that's really, when you talk about these numbers, then you realize how important they are. But also they serve as a nursery for multiple species, so they are really protecting the small ones from the predators. And that's not to mention as well the protection that they provide to local communities, especially when the sea level rise and also when there are some storms on the coastline. So as well, they can provide food security for the communities as well due to these nurseries. So these are just some characteristics that I wanted to share with you. And today we have a very exciting panel. This event is a collaboration between the Conservation International, ORA, and Van Oord. And of course, they will introduce themselves shortly, but I would like to invite here Ariane to give a small presentation of ORA work.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So my name is Ariane Steinsmeier. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Director of ORA. So the Ocean Risk Resilience Action Alliance is an alliance with more than 100 members, and some of the members are also present here, so thank you for the collaboration. And the goal really of us is to make sure that we are fostering collaboration between different sectors. So ocean risk has been sort of a newly topic around the last 5 to 10 years, that slowly different stakeholders have been thinking about ocean risk, but also then especially the private sector in terms of resilience, in terms of the insurance products they might need to sort of adjust, as well as the business sector as well. So with that, we kind of realized that a collaboration between NGOs, governments, the private sector is really needed, also because we often don't speak the same language or have access to the same data. And so that has been really the core of ORA for the past 5 years. And so our mission is really to work together and support the Alliance to come up with new innovative financial solutions, both from the bottom up to top down, and really focus on what could be some key innovation products, like insurance product, financial products, which can then help to bring new financial security to the community level. But also then how do they really measure against sort of resilience for people, as well as sort of leveraging new financial flows to the communities itself. So our impact over the past 5 years has been really sort of a growing membership. So I was just saying that we have more than 100 members now. And again, it's a really vibrant collaboration between the organizations working sort of on the ground together, as well as also on the policy level. We have been able to leverage already quite significant finance to the ground, but also through in-kind contributions sort of activated around sort of 45 million altogether. And looking forward to increasing, therefore, also resilience up to now to nearly 180,000 community members. So as I said, so our strategic plan is really around 3 goals. We have seen in the past that the problem has always been, or at least sort of communicated, was the problem that there isn't enough pipeline or there isn't innovation sort of on the local level. So for the first 5 years, we really have been investing into locally driven solutions, and we're able to not only pilot some of the innovative solutions, but now able to scale them. One of the example is parametric insurance for either small-scale fishers or reef-positive businesses, to help them to adjust to some of the impacts of natural disasters, for example. And so while this has been tested in the Asia-Pacific regions, we now are scaling it with our members in the Mesoamerican reef. And so these are some of the examples of the past 5 years. In addition, and that's what I want to focus on in my presentation, we are also really thinking about the enabling conditions. One is sort of, the blue regenerative and sustainable blue economy is still a nascent space. So for us to really help to measure what is the impact we can gain if we are having high integrity quality products was really important, but also what are the right data tools and other tools needed to make better decisions into sort of investing into the sustainable and regenerative blue economy. And last but not least, what are some of the key larger scale financial instruments like blue bonds and de-risking the investment space by creating sort of new larger scale innovations in the capital market for the ocean. So one of the tools we wanted to share before we go deeper into sort of the mangrove discussion is a new tool we launched. It's the Coastal Risk Index, and that is really a tool where, together with some of our scientific partners, we were able to now launch this open source mechanisms where you can see what is the risk of flooding in the coastal communities for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And the research has shown that at the moment, not only 40% of the communities are living globally in coastal communities, but also that the assets at these coastal communities are around, which are at stake, are around 400 billion annually, as well also 14 million more people are more at risk for flooding in the next coming years if you continue with the destruction of the natural infrastructure. And so that tool really shows how mangroves and other coastal ecosystem help with the protection and what happens if you either increase or decrease these natural sort of buffers in the coastal areas. The Coastal Risk Index doesn't only show the physical impact, but it also shows the social and economic impact in these communities as well. And so we really hope with this tool that we're able to provide better data for better decisions in this space, and not only enable sort of communities to plan ahead, but also investors who are coming outside to really help communities to be building a more resilient infrastructure. The other tool I wanted to mention, which we also put together with the Conservation International, is around blue carbon. So obviously, blue carbon is a buzz. There are a lot of events here as well, and we really wanted to make sure when around 3 to 4 years the blue carbon discussion increased, that we making sure that we're really having a high integrity and high quality principles and guidelines into investing into blue carbon, to making sure that learning from other spaces, that we're really starting with that sort of high ambitious goal. So 2 years ago we launched the high quality blue carbon principles and guidelines. It's a practitioner oriented tool, but we really felt like it's needed now to translate that into the different stakeholders who might be using it. So the practitioner's guide, which we launched just a couple of weeks in Cali, is enabling project developers but also investors to look into like where they are in the developing of their own projects to meet these standards. And so the progress wheel, which you can see here and also can download, really helps you then to do an assessment where you stand, but helps you also then to understand what is the pathway forward to meet these standards as well. Moving forward, we will continue to work with the core partners around this tool sort of to integrate integrate that into also some other mechanisms. For example, Aura is also building a blue marketplace for blended finance solutions, where we hope to integrate that tool as well when investors are seeking high quality products for blue carbon, and even explore a more interactive sort of AI-based learning tool around that as well. So that is something we really look forward to. Obviously also with Van Oord and other partners, we're thinking about what are the technology innovations and really foster this collaboration between the different members to come up with new solutions, especially into mangrove restoration and conservation. So with that, I think I will leave the discussion for the panel, and then we can dive deeper in some of these solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ariane, for that great overview to tell us a little bit about your work and the tools and the finance and the guidance on that, because I think we are going to touch that point as well, having private sector and NGOs here. So just before we start the discussion, I would like to ask Robert and Jill also to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about the work that they have been doing with mangroves. So Jill, if you can start, please.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Jill Hamilton. I'm the Director of Blue Climate Strategy, so really focused on ocean and climate policy, including blue carbon, at Conservation International.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Robert de Bruin, and I'm Director Corporate Affairs at Van Oord. And I try to elaborate later a little bit on, let's say, the implementation side based on maybe the first presentation of Ariane.
Thank you both. So that also set the scene for you, the audience, to know a little bit about where are they coming from and the discussion that we are going to have today. So I would like to start with a question to you, Jill. We know that mangroves are increasingly recognized for their critical role in climate mitigation and adaptation. But I would like to know from your experience, how can we ensure that mangroves are effectively integrated into the national policies and the climate strategies that we are seeing, for example, here at COP?
Sure. So NDCs and adaptation plans, et cetera, are really great moments to set those initial goals. And we've seen more and more countries over recent years, including mangroves and other blue carbon habitats in their NDCs. The US was also the first country to include mangroves and blue carbon habitats in their national greenhouse gas inventory, which was very exciting. But it's really important because it puts it on the agenda, right? Like many other topics that are included in NDCs. And what's exciting about mangroves is they can be included in a lot of different ways. And CI and many other partners have developed guidelines for including mangroves and other blue carbon habitats in NDCs for both mitigation benefits, but also adaptation benefits. There's biodiversity benefits. There's a lot of different entry points for countries, and we're seeing more and more countries. They might initially mention mangroves as a critical ecosystem to achieving their climate goals, but more so now getting the data and the technical aspects to really help these places start contributing to mitigation outcomes, et cetera. So we're also, I just would like to note, there is that strong biodiversity link with mangrove ecosystems. So encouraging and supporting governments on linking NDCs with biodiversity strategies and action plans. There's been some momentum, but certainly lots more work needed there to really recognize all of the co-benefits that these places provide.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the answer. I think we recognize that there is a link that we can really have between the NDCs and, of course, how mangroves can support those elements as well. But also coming from the COP16 in Cali, we had the MBSAPs, and they're also more focused on biodiversity and conservation. But really need to come together, and the way to come together is to really address the mangroves as part of solutions for climate and also biodiversity. Now I would like to go to you, Robert. A little bit more on the private sector. Van Oord has some experience on mangrove restoration, but can you please tell us what is important for Van Oord? How can you really use these tools, for example, mentioned by Ariane, and also the policy guidance from Conservation International?
Yeah, sure, great. And thanks to give that opportunity. Yesterday I visited one of the meetings about finalizing the text about the Climate Adaptation Fund. And just in 45 minutes, I just was counting how many times the word NBS, nature-based solutions, was mentioned. It was 38, so I think it's a mouthful. So we are in that element. And where we as Van Oord are stepping in, so I'm representing a private company, and a international marine contractor. Already for decades, let's say, working on big infrastructure projects, coastal restoration, port development, river basins, deltas, etc. And I think, and it's a little bit a semantic discussion, but I think biodiversity and nature is becoming more and more crucial also in those elements. We invested as private sector heavily in Europe we are calling it building with nature, nature-based solutions, whatever, ecosystem services. And I think we are now on the edge, and maybe that's also worthwhile to make compliments and congrats to ORA, that a lot of things when it's about financial arrangement, facilities are coming in place. We are not there yet, but I think it's definitely on the table. And when we look from the implementation side, and then maybe linking to your topic, Viviana, about mangrove, we see mangrove, but it's also applicable for seagrass, coral, etc., are having different functions. And I think the challenge is to approach them on a multidisciplinary way. So when you look at mangrove, in itself, it's having a big a relevance and a goal in the whole system, let's say, to protect coastal areas. You can imagine it's taking away energy, etc. Second one, it's having a big objective in respect to the nature side, biodiversity, CO2 sequestration, etc. And last but not least, and I think that was also mentioned by Ariane, it's having a relevance for communities involved, whether it's about firewood, construction materials, fishery, etc. Now we see, and maybe later we come to some concrete examples, those areas are quite under threat. And from the perspective of Van Oord, let's say also as an implementation partner, we are doing projects. We think we can do much better, let's say a little bit on a bigger scale, in combining the functions in respect to the natural areas, also related to big coastal protection sites. I think that's the way where we are stepping in. And yeah, then you need, and it was also mentioned by Jill, you need, of course, so as Van Oord we are working in an average year in 50 different countries. Yeah, you need indeed an international framework and a policy framework, let's say, to make your business case on the same way. So we're working in Mozambique, in Vietnam, in the Middle East, and every country is having their own system. Well, that's a big challenge, and that's where we're also quite happy as Van Oord. And Ariane, before the meeting, said to me, it's also the task, let's say, connecting the dots, and I think that's an important one, in the end, to come up with the execution of mangrove projects.
Yeah. Thank you, and actually that's a perfect ending for the next question that I wanted to ask you, Ariane, because indeed, like implementation partners like Van Oord has difficulty to really understand what are those policies. We move from one country to another that's completely different. And I wanted to ask you, Ariane, how do we make sure that all of these policies are more integrated into international frameworks that can be used for implementation partners to really booster all this process?
Yeah, thank you. I think when you come from the international arena, and you mentioned it, it's important that internationally countries are agreeing on sort of overarching principles, and then the question is, how does we translate it into the national level? And you mentioned already NDCs, and And you mentioned coming from the biodiversity that the national biodiversity plans are important. And so what we have been starting to do with some of our country members is, especially also in the space of the regenerative and sustainable blue economy, is trying to understand what are the enabling conditions therefore in country. How do you translate the different conventions also into the national policy? But specifically also, given that the blue economy is such a nascent space, is helping them some of the either focal points within the environmental ministry or other ministries who are now thinking more strategically about connecting the dots in countries around blue economy to help them to understand where are the synergies. And I think it's really good to see at this COP that the synergies between some of the biodiversity targets are connected with the climate change target. 30 by 30, I think, was highly on the agenda this week. And I think continuously with the Cali COP prior to this COP, we have really seen that these both discussions are merging now together when we think about areas around nature-based solutions, ocean-based solutions moving forward. I think what we have seen in country, especially with the focal points for the blue economy, that it's often not, there isn't often yet an integrated approach, even though when you see on the local level, all the solutions are or should be integrated and are often, like mayors are thinking not about, in silos, what are my climate strategy, what is my biodiversity strategy. Mayors and local leaders have to really foster sort of the integration and holistic approach. And that's really where we benefit also from the diversity of our members and implementation partners on the ground, let it be, business and private companies, but also the more than 50 local NGOs we are collaborating with and helping them to also therefore share their experience from the ground in that nascent space and help that connection to the national level and help to make sure that then also the innovations which we have been piloted are integrated now into national policy. And I think often that translation is forgotten. We often think about how do we translate global goals into national policies, but I think the other way around is also something we need to think about and where the partnership is also eager to help.
Yeah. Thank you. And we also recognize that gap that we are having at the moment really on the implementation side. And of course, we are also getting familiar with all the terminology and the climate goals and how that will. And the big question is always, how do we translate this into projects, into frameworks? How is going to be this part of the national plans for each of the countries that have these type of ecosystems as part of their territory? But now moving a little bit more into the implementation side and also the financial constraints that are facing some implementation partners. Jill, I wanted to ask you from your perspective and the work that you are going on doing on the Conservation International, how can we really work on innovative finance for these coastal ecosystems and how we can really attract the implementation partners to go and work on those areas without having too much risk?
Definitely. So I think something that's already been highlighted is blue carbon credits and they're linked to mangroves, the need for high integrity, high quality. And I think when people think about financing options for mangroves or blue carbon habitats, carbon credits is that kind of first thought, especially in this space. However, sometimes the size of the project or the type of the ecosystem or just a preference, might not lend itself well to carbon crediting. And so what we have been working on recently is thinking through additional options and resources for those options beyond carbon crediting for blue carbon habitats. There's things like innovative insurance products, which was mentioned earlier, that build coastal resilience and keep communities at the heart of those decisions. There's payment for ecosystem services examples that have been around for many years in Ecuador, in Costa Rica, for mangroves and other coastal ecosystems that work really well and can be designed in a really positive way. There's examples of blue bonds. There's just a growing suite of financing options, and I think building principles of high quality across these options for mangrove ecosystems and thinking through what are the enabling conditions that are needed from a policy perspective and a stakeholder perspective to bring those to reality is a really important next step. That is an area of our work at Conservation International related to blue carbon crediting and credits for mangroves, thinking through what are those policy enablers if a country or a region really does want to access carbon finance that lead to high quality outcomes. Things like, you need to know who owns the carbon, land tenure, benefit sharing agreements, and a whole suite of other options. So that's what we are thinking through in terms of financing needs and the link to policy.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think now with that, I would like to go back to Robert. We have, as Van Oort, 2 different projects on mangroves. And listening to what Jill just mentioned on these financial mechanisms, I would like you to share a little bit of the experience on the projects that we have as Van Oort and how this actually is seen by the private sector and the upscaling of these projects.
Yeah, I give it a try. And maybe also referring to you, Jill. Within Van Oort, when it's about the implementation side, I think it's important, let's say, to determine what kind of mangroves are we talking about. Whether it's about conservation, whether it's about restoration, whether it's about new development or other combinations. And that makes sense, of course, from the private partner, which kind of financial instruments we can use. Now, we are here at the COP, so I think it's an important one that there will be some more clarity on the Article 6 discussions, let's say, organizing the whole market. And Ariane, you was also referring, I think from the private sector, we need a proper and an integral marketplace on the whole when it's about the carbon side. Now, when you look at the conversation side, we do have examples as Van Oort, but you can imagine that's not really a business case from the private side. So you have to work indeed with blue carbon credits, RED Plus, etc. But I think that will be extended further. When you look more in the restoration side, I think then it's not easy, but then there are more possibilities also from the implementation side to come up with other business cases, and we definitely have the need to use financial instruments on that side, but then you have also to discuss about a change of land use, adding other functions, etc. When you look more at the regenerative aspects, we are also in some projects in the pipeline, for example, in the Middle East, complete, let's say, to make new mangroves, where, let's say, really in the past were some areas, then you're also using other principles. And in the end, in my first remarks, I referred also to the coastal protection and the coastal erosion side. Yeah, that's also needed, let's say, to come in. Now, maybe to make it a little bit practical, in Vietnam, maybe that's a nice example more, let's say, for the restoration side. I'm not having the figures by heart, but something 800,000 hectares in the Delta area, in the Mekong area, which is the area of mangrove. A decrease of 2,000 hectares each year, but based on cost by the aquaculture, the shrimp farms. And as an example, as a business case, and then we are looking indeed also on the crediting side, but also other earning models. We are now busy with a kind of industry project, let's say, to combine that with the shrimp farms. And we are also using vegetation to purify the water with the nutrients, etc. Well, those are quite successful, let's say, on the technology side and the R&D side. And where you're able to combine with those functions and, let's say, to fight a little bit back on that side, I think that can be very useful. Now, and then maybe on the policy side, then, to be honest, Vietnam is not the most easy country to work when it's about the framework. Also not for the financial instruments. And that's exactly where Aura and other partners can step in also to partner with us and to help us to find out, let's say, the best solution for that element. Now, maybe the second example I'm having in mind. Now, I'm doubting whether I take the regenerative element in the Middle East or maybe first the conversation side in Mozambique. Yeah, that's quite complicated. And then we need also NGOs and partners such as here, because as a private company, it's not that easy to have foot on the ground. So you definitely are talking about community involvement. We did a lot of community sessions over there together with the chiefs of the communities. It sounds a little bit ethnocentric, but also to do on the education side, to work together with those people. And we executed. It was not a big project, but in the end also to looking into the hydraulic aspects, hydrologic aspects, the sediments aspects, and then together with communities, make a, let's say, a new plan to let's say to restore further that areas. And in the end, for the North, that's not very interesting. What's about Red Plus or the others, but it's good in the interest of the communities over there.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And I think, these projects have their own challenges. And also to add into the example of Mozambique, this is a community-led restoration project, and we had like the social package part of it, really guiding people to have some alternative livelihoods and how they can use mangroves on their side, like really looking at it as an ally. But looking at those really practical examples, I wanted to ask you, Jill and Ariane, how do you see these practical examples, the challenges that the private sector are facing on upscaling mainly mangrove restoration? Would you like to start? Yeah.
Sure. One new area that Conservation International is looking at is a blue carbon plus model that looks at additional businesses that can thrive in mangrove habitats. So, different types of business models that communities might develop, from food products to different tourism services and offerings that are sustainable and can provide both a community and livelihoods benefit and a business case both for communities and investors to protect and conserve these special places. And that could be coupled with high quality carbon credits, could be coupled with other types of financing. So I think both a blended finance component and like really taking a look at that livelihoods element and the businesses that can flourish in a healthy mangrove habitat helps build that case and is attractive, I think, to investment. Another example tied to the shrimp aquaculture example that you just provided is CI has a similar project. We call it Climate Smart Shrimp, where aquaculture is sustainably intensified and kind of shrunk in size, and then that allows for the restoration of the mangrove habitats. It also helps with effluent coming out of these production when you have these healthy habitats along the coast. And I think an interesting element of looking at more sustainable shrimp aquaculture that does not lead to deforestation, which is of course a driving factor, is that these products, shrimp that is grown in a way that does no harm to mangroves and actually contributes to conservation, could be sold at a premium in markets. And so kind of tying to that business case where if products that come from these habitats or are dependent on healthy mangroves are produced in a way that encourages conservation and sustainability, when they enter markets, they could in theory be sold at higher prices. And so thinking through those kind of opportunities too, I think is really exciting and something we could all be looking into a little bit more.
Thank you. And Ariane?
Yeah, I mean, I think the approach you mentioned is something I would have underlined as well, to really see what is the different option of livelihoods and how really mangrove are integrated into a communist business case and livelihood. I think what I wanted to also underline is that with the high quality blue carbon principles and guidelines, I really wanted to say that, yes, the end goal not necessarily is always blue carbon credits and crediting, but really understanding also how can you build a pathway for communities to make sure that they are getting the benefits out of it, but also having the investors or potential buyers of future carbon credits understand that also it's a long pathway. And I think, Jill, that's also what you've mentioned. It takes some time to really therefore build high quality, high integrity carbon benefits, and really thinking about sort of also therefore resilience credits or biodiversity credits, which I think is a growing sort of interest in these as well, and therefore sort of seeing all of that holistically and not just focusing on that potential outcome of a carbon credit is important.
And based on what you mentioned about this type of new credits, how mature are those credits to really bring on the implementation side?
Yeah, I think there are, I think on the biodiversity credits, there is a task force who are thinking about it already. And I think in Cali, there were some discussions around sort of the next level on how the pathway could really be on implementing. But I'm not an expert. I don't know if you have been part of these discussions. But I also saw that other of our partners like RARE and CI and others are also thinking about resilience credits as well. And what does that mean? And so I think it's in a very nascent space, in a piloting phase, but really has potentials to, and again, not necessarily again focus on a potential crediting, but really understanding like what are the different benefits of blue carbon ecosystem like mangroves in terms of building resilience for a community, livelihoods, biodiversity, integrity, as well as some of the other potential climate outcomes.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think now we have seen all the discussions starting at COP16 in Cali, and also having the discussions like here at COP29. Then I think this is really will come together in COP30 in Brazil, because I think that's one of the main focus, that we cannot really talk about climate without talking about biodiversity. And with that, I would like to now move into, okay, what is our vision? Like thinking about the big picture, and also your perspectives, your work. How do you see this work moving forward? So we are aware about the mangroves, all the potential that they have to solve a lot of our challenges, protect communities. But so then, like, I would like to ask each of you your perspective on how are we moving forward? What's the vision now on that aspect? Yeah.
It's a great question. I think with mangrove conservation, restoration, financing, we have a lot of really good examples. We have a lot of, we're past the pilot stage, right? Maybe there's a couple of financing approaches that are, newer, more innovative, still kind of gaining traction, but we have a lot of examples. And so I think it's about helping to connect projects and countries that are already doing amazing work on mangroves, and building capacity and sharing knowledge with places that might just be starting up. So there's lots of replication potential in this space, is what I'd say. And there's a really, really strong global network of partners. There's the Global Mangrove Alliance, including the Mangrove Breakthrough, which you may have seen. There's more events on that today. There's every type of stakeholder and institution working in this space, and I think really doing so in a collaborative way, which is unique and great to see. But yeah, I would love to see every country with mangroves, including mangroves in their climate strategy, whether it's an NDC, whether it's a national climate resilience strategy, whether it's a new climate or carbon policy. Making that space and getting that down in a long-term strategy now, so that we do not lose any more mangroves, and we can focus on, restoring what we have lost and protecting these places for future generations.
Thank you.
Yeah, just building on this, I thank you for underlining the importance that there is already, we're beyond the pilot phase, and that policy is important. Maybe then in addition, what Aura is really looking forward to in the next 12 months is to map out the different roles of the different sector. You mentioned already the role of, for the NGOs and local partners, but also then the businesses. But we really also, based on the high quality blue carbon principles and guidelines, would like to understand what is the role then of sort of the banking sector and the financial sector, if they're interested in pre-investing into some of these high quality blue carbon ecosystems, but then also help project developers to understand how can I really build a high integrity project and really therefore also scale in country as well. And then last but not least, I think from here we want to move forward. The UN Ocean Conference is mid next year, so that will be a focus of ours to bring these discussions further, as well as then also we have seen here that Brazil is quite eager to integrate some of these discussions in the next COP. You mentioned it, that we will probably see a more integration around biodiversity and climate discussions in the next 12 years. And time is running out. This is why I think, Jill, I really appreciated your point to say, like, we have the tools. I mentioned also the Coastal Risk Index, so we can make better decisions and really sort of move forward fast and make it count.
Thanks, Ariane. Yeah, I think I definitely underline, let's say, the remarks of both of you, but maybe asking the question is much easier than answering, Viv, what's the vision about it. But I think from the private perspective, we are a believer. I think we can do and achieve much more than we are achieving now. So I think the technology is over there, the finance instruments are coming over there. So for us as a private partner, but I'm repeating myself, choosing and selecting the right partner is an issue. So that it's important that we have, let's say, a good overview of the whole network which is existing in the, let's say, in the world. Also choosing the right projects. On that side, as a private partner, we definitely need, also the communities on a level of the multi-stakeholder element. That's more important than just building a green infrastructure project. And I think that's an element. Yeah, and when it's about, let's say, the visibility and more the formal aspects, I think the moment is here. I think, Ariane, you touch on the biodiversity metrics or the biodiversity credits. I think it's quite an opportunity maybe to combine, it's not easy, but combine the biodiversity metrics and the crediting market combined with the carbon credit marketing. So use also all the stuff which has been in discussion in the Article 6 element that can be, let's say, useful also to progress and accelerate that program. Yeah, and in the end, some clarity, and a lot of partners are working. As Van Noord, we are working with blended finance, private equity, sovereign bonds, concession loans, etc. Yeah, it must be also, let's say, it's important that have a clear view on all the instruments which are available in the different countries.
Thank you. And I think, you touch a very important point as well, that maybe it's a little bit outside of this conversation, but having these nature metrics are also essential for the private sector to really step into mangrove restoration, preservation, because this is quite a challenge that we have as well. I think with emissions, we have a clarity on how to really measure emissions, but when it's about nature, it becomes more challenging. And I think that those, so the finance tools and also the policy that we have discussed today should be in parallel as well with the nature metrics, so we can make sure that everyone is on board understanding these tools and also what can bring each of the partners bring on the table. So we
maybe a little stronger, Viv. I think from the private sector, it's important, let's say, to push now on the biodiversity metrics and the credits. Yeah. So when you're talking from the private sector, let's say the relevance of a marketplace, the data must be available. We must can validate. You must can make the proper registrations. You need the right certifications, and there's a hell of a job to do. We learned that also on the carbon side. So I should say let's use the momentum to speed up with that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a clear need that we definitely need to push on these biodiversity metrics. We have some minutes for questions, and I think it will be nice to also interact a little bit with the audience. So, someone would like to maybe add a comment or ask a question to the panelists. Don't be shy.
I think it'll be weird to hear myself talk into the headphones.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest opportunity for unlocking mangrove's potential in the next 12 months?
Thank you. Who would like to address?
Yeah, for me it's simple. I hope we are finalizing our business case in Vietnam. And that means we have, let's say, a business case, which we did the testing on the design. We have the result validated about the results on that element. That's also taking out the nutrients in the water. And we are, let's say, busy with permitting a big area where we can continue. Another one, so I think it's also the second one for the coming 12 months. We have to work, both of you are also referring, we have to work on the pipeline of the projects. So I was also referring to projects with a more regenerative element. Yeah, that will take 2-3 years, let's say, from the drawing table into let's say, the execution. And the biggest problem, it's I can't mention the country, it's somewhere in the Middle East. The biggest challenge is, let's say, to organize the concession and the agreements with the government bodies. Yeah. And yeah, I'm optimistic, but don't know whether we can reach that in 12 months. But I hope so.
Yeah, maybe at COP30 we will have some positive outcomes, Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to strengthen probably really, sorry, this focus from the community level, and not only foster sort of South-South exchange so that some of the really innovative solutions can be scaled, but really then also, and I think that's what Aura will be focusing on with our partners, is if there are potential buyers, and there are a lot of, there's the Buyer Alliance and other who are really interested in sort of that blue carbon market, but making sure that they understand that it has to be high integrity and high quality, and also helping them to understand the pathway and the time it needs also to build that, and bringing a little bit of patience into that discussion, but unlocking the potential in the meantime that restoration goals and the social outcomes and the economic outcomes on the community level can really be fostered in the next 12 months.
Yeah, earlier I mentioned that there are a lot of good examples currently of work being done well, and I'm very excited, and we're working in collaboration with some of these folks about Brazil, and the fact that the next time we will all see each other is likely in Brazil, or the UN Ocean Conference. And Brazil this June released their first national mangrove policy called Pro Mangazal, and are now working on an action plan for that. And it's a really, really good example of like an integrated national framework for mangrove conservation and restoration, looking into financing options, keeping communities and indigenous peoples at the heart of the discussion, and just doing so in a very, very thoughtful way. And I think that COP30 is that perfect moment where we can facilitate some really strong knowledge sharing, exchange, just elevate this discussion to an even higher level. And I look forward to seeing next steps on that work plan that Brazil is moving forward. So that's mine.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's a great momentum for the region as well to really boost collaboration, shared knowledge, and also bring all these projects into the region as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm from Mauritius, small island nation. We have some mangrove, but they're quite limited in size, the forests, and they're a little bit dispersed around the island. And we did a bit of a feasibility study to benefit from carbon markets, and the result wasn't very good for us in that the forests are too small and it's difficult to prove additionality. And they said maybe if you can find a way to bundle forests together, but I don't know if you have examples around other SIDS where people were able to benefit from carbon market or other innovative financing mechanisms with tiny forests that are bundled in one or another.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that Conservation International has thought a lot about in the Pacific with our Pacific small island offices and teams, because it is a challenge, and there's definitely different methodologies that might be a better fit for island nations, small island nations. I'm not the technical expert on this, so I can connect you, but I would just say, look at, you have Vera, but also look at kind of other options that are perhaps more focused on community benefits and livelihood outcomes. Also look beyond carbon financing. I think like this comes up where project size or conservation or restoration goals or the current status, like you mentioned, additionality, would make it challenging and perhaps not worth the effort to access those markets. And so really taking a stock take of additional options, and I hope that like as a stakeholder community we can also like do a better job of supporting countries that are thinking through that, and saying what is actually needed for each of these options. I think that is a gap. So yeah, not a super clear answer, but could also connect you with someone on our team who is thinking about this in a really technical way. There's like some options for like aggregating projects as well, but it depends on like the total scope.
Some other remarks from the panelists? No? Okay. Robert, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, so I don't know the answer exactly. But we looked as Van Noord into some small islands in the Pacific, and also in the Carib. That you can imagine, also from the Netherlands and Carib, there are some relations. So I fully understand your problem, team. And yeah, the answer is scale matters, and I think that's an issue we have to solve with the small islands. And I hope, but I'm not an expert on that side. I think when we are able to finalize the NDCs on a proper way, then we're also having, let's say, more or less a trading system we can use maybe to negotiate a little bit on that side. But fair question, and I learned also in the political area there's a lot of attention to the small islands, and I think it's important to raise those questions, and bundling should be, from my perspective, the answer. When we look to the Carib, but also to other small islands, you can't do it for one island alone, and that's not only about the restoration side, also about, let's say, the sea level rise and the other concerns which are facing over there.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. Robert.
So continue asking those questions, I should say.
Yeah, perfect. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah, I think if not, I would like to conclude the session. I think it was very interesting to see. We still have a long path to go, but I think we are having a great momentum into the oceans, and also we're having the UN Oceans Conference in June in Nice. So these conversations will continue, and hopefully when we meet again at COP30, we will have a better answer for the question, and also how we can really help small island states to really boost restoration of mangroves, and also all the benefits that will be for the small islands, and also for other nations that have mangroves as an ecosystem as part of the territory. So thank you so much, and happy to connect if you have more questions. So thank you, and enjoy the Oceans Day, and I hope you can find all the sessions as insightful as this one. So please applause the panel. Yeah.